and welcome back to That's What She Said. My name is Mercy. Hope you all are doing good. I'm very excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking about something that I've always been curious about. On this episode, we have chef, food entrepreneur Sandesh Reddy with us. Welcome to That's What She Said, Sandy.
Thank you, Mercy. This is my first video podcast, so
Nice.
this rolls easy.
I'm so glad you agreed to do this with me. I think we're going to have a conversation that people who are watching, they'll have something to take away from this.
I hope I
really
say
hope
useful
so.
things.
So, Sandy, so let's start with, even though I've met you like a couple of times, we have few mutual friends and stuff. I've met you socially. I've always wondered what exactly do you do, right? Of course, people know that you own Sandy's, the restaurant. Everyone knows Sandy's in Chennai. But apart from that, I keep seeing you posting about other restaurants or, like on Instagram and stuff like that. What all do you do? And can we start from the beginning, right? Like, did you grow up in Chennai? And how did you end up in the restaurant business? How did it all happen?
Well, I grew up in Chennai, I went to PSBB, and as every obedient South Indian kid, found my way into an engineering college. I went to College of Engineering, Guindy.
Okay.
Sucked at math long enough to realize I can't be an engineer, so dropped out to start cooking. So it's pretty much it. And since nobody would ever give a fresher or a non-culinary professional a job in a kitchen, I had to go start my own thing, and that's pretty much how I got into restaurants. 2006 is when we opened Sinful Something. It was a small, tiny dessert bar outside my parents' house, which is now their watchman's cabin, so you can imagine how big it was.
Okay.
And then Sandy's happened somewhere in 2009, and it's been one restaurant project after another. So, to answer your first question, all the restaurants I post about are either restaurants that I own completely or that I've collaborated with somebody. When I say collaborate, it also means that I'm mentoring a bunch of younger food entrepreneurs that I've invested in.
Right.
So there's no consulting. So I'm usually a significant shareholder in this business, usually majority. Even if I'm helping somebody, it's just I like to take that position because if you have to commit to a project and you have to commit wholeheartedly. I don't think these passive 5%, 10% investments are going to yield anything significant. Neither is the other person on the other side of the table going to take you seriously enough to make meaningful decisions, right?
Correct, yeah.
And then you feel like, okay, about 5%, 10%, you have nothing to lose. There's this whole conversation about, well, do you want to be the chicken or the pig when it comes to the breakfast table, right? For a chicken, laying an egg is a bit of discomfort. For a pig, putting bacon on the plate is a lifetime commitment, right? So I like to consider myself to be the pig in this case. So I commit to every project in a significant way. That's probably what has led to almost 30 different brands in the city of Chennai. Now we operate in 6 different cities.
Okay.
Largish operation right now.
Yes. I was reading this article recently, and it was mentioned apparently in India it's easier to get a gun than to start a restaurant.
It's actually easier to start an ammunition factory or an arms factory than starting
What's
a
the
restaurant.
process like? How tedious it is to start a restaurant?
Look, honestly, it's not tedious.
Okay.
I think we also kind of glorify struggle a lot.
Yes.
I mean, in that sense. Getting those 6 arms manufacturing license is probably more difficult than opening 100 restaurants. Let's be honest about it. I mean, while we talk about ease of doing business, I don't think that it exists in this country, regardless of what you do, right?
Right.
But that's the nature of the market, and then you'll have to realize how to navigate that and be smart about it. There are people to do these things for you. You don't necessarily have to sit and do this all yourself. So hire the right people that will be able to go around getting you your licenses, and you go about doing what is necessary for you, which is to go and build your restaurant, right?
Okay.
I think it's not difficult. I mean,
Okay.
it's complicated, but it's not difficult.
Got it. Okay, so let's say someone who's watching this podcast right now wants to start a restaurant. What would you say are your, like the top 3 non-negotiables? This has to be there if you want to start a restaurant.
Commitment. I think passion secondary.
Okay.
The first real obstacle, passion goes out of the window, right? And you have to be committed to the cause. Think of this as like a marathon and not a sprint. This is a long-term game. You will see highs, you will see lows,
Right.
and you will probably see all of it in the first 6 months, right? And you will question your existence within the first 6 months. You have to be willing to live through it and plow through it. And that commitment is what is going to really make or break most restaurants.
Right.
Second thing is, just because you're a good cook doesn't make you a good restaurateur. They're two
Right.
very different skill sets, right? And it's very rarely do those two things end up complementing each other. And be cognizant of your market. You're not building a restaurant for yourself. You're
Right.
building it for an audience. Right?
Correct.
And be aware of your audience, and be fairly clear about what you're setting out to do. Until you find that clarity, don't start.
Right.
Trying to wing it along the way is where you end up losing a lot of time and money. And if you have both of those in infinite resource, then sure, you can go and wing it. But otherwise, I think it's prudent to spend some time, ideate, gain some clarity before you go out and start
Right.
a restaurant.
I was watching this video and someone was on, I think it was a podcast, I'm not sure. Someone was saying that restaurant business is the most, selfless business. And like, if that person was saying, I wouldn't advise anybody to start a restaurant unless or until you really have it in you. What would you say? What's your take on it?
I think restaurateurs and chefs tend to glorify their pain a little too much. Look, it's just like any business, right? I mean, I think we tend to kind of over exaggerate some of our we're not curing cancer. Like, look, honestly, that is selfless, right? I mean, the kind of time that doctors put into, or doctors or scientists or researchers are putting into taking care of situations that change the world, that is selfless.
Right.
You're in a service business, sure. I mean, you're no different than an air hostess that's sitting in, a cabin crew, or what, a wait staff, or a receptionist at some desk that's doing their job because, I mean, well, they need to do it at a certain way, and that makes a certain difference to the person that's at the receiving end of it, and that's what makes it the service industry. And sure, if you have it in you, you'll be good at it, right?
Right.
And people kind of take away positive experiences from that interaction. Look, I'm probably a left field player when it comes to the restaurant business. I don't come from the hospitality industry. Like I said, I went to engineering school. I think I use more like a common sense approach to this rather than like a more qualified approach to it. Given that I'm probably not able to relate to some of the more nuanced feelings that a lot of restaurateurs and chefs go through.
Okay, got it. What do you think are some mistakes that people make when they start a restaurant? I'm sure you would have seen it. You help people, set up restaurants.
Well, I
and
make more
stuff.
mistakes than most people do.
So why don't you say from your experience then? What were the initial mistakes that you made when you were setting up restaurants and it didn't work?
Let my ego get in the way. You feel like you're better than your audience,
Okay.
or you feel like you're in a place that need not necessarily resonate with your thoughts. And at some point, I think it also comes down to you feeling like what you're doing is the best, right?
Right.
And best is subjective. I give this analogy normally about the circumstances, far exceeding the objective, right? It's like taking my mother to a sushi restaurant. She's Telugu. Her idea of a great meal is hot rice, overcooked fish in a spicy sauce, right? And it's the
Right.
paradigm opposite of a good sushi experience.
Right.
It's cold rice, raw fish, and with a little bit of vinegar in it or whatever soy, right? And that's it. That doesn't make it a bad meal. It just makes the audience less receptive to what could arguably be the best sushi experience in the world. But if it doesn't work for her, it doesn't work for her. It doesn't make
Correct.
it doesn't make the food bad or her wrong. I think getting to that understanding fairly early in my life has helped me shape a lot of my decisions.
Okay.
So in terms of mistakes, I think also in general I'm somebody who delegates very quickly.
That is so important.
Well, yes and no, and and that's the thing. I think I delegate too quickly.
Okay.
I think being a little more hands-on has helped a little bit more later in my life, but I still delegate. I still, obviously, I mean, there's no way for me to run as
Do
many as I
everything.
do.
Yeah, correct.
But also make sure that you partner with people with the right intent, right, or the same intent as you. And
Right.
I think that's not happened in the past, and that's probably led to a lot of conflict from a vision standpoint itself.
Right.
And so those are definitely big mistakes of mine.
Okay. Okay.
With first time restaurateurs, the biggest failure that I see is them underestimating how expensive this can get.
Yes.
Most people don't have a sense of their budget. I always say before you start a restaurant, no matter how many times you've done this, lead with budget.
Right.
Keep a number that you're willing to risk. Keep a number that you have like immediate liquidity to play with. Otherwise, it's just a slippery slope, and then you won't realize how much money you've sunk into building the restaurant and not having enough money to kind of tide
Sustain
through
it. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first few months. At least have visibility of cash flow. The other thing I've seen people do is borrow to start restaurants. You don't know the outcome. If it does well, great.
Correct.
But there's such high chances of first-time restaurateurs failing that it kind of puts them in a place where they owe money and they've lost it and they don't have a cash flow
Right.
mechanism to kind of sustain or repay it. And that tends to be
Right.
quite a bit of a challenge. So
I get it. The restaurant scene in Chennai right now, right? This is what I see. I'm not sure if this is what's happening as a consumer point of view. I feel there are very few restaurants in Chennai that I keep going back to. Like, most of them, especially I think in the last few years, there's like a surge in cafes. Like, every street has a Instagrammable cafe. But when I go there, I don't know if I'm getting my money's worth, right? Like if I have to get a coffee these days, I have to spend at least $400 to get a coffee, right? And I would say maybe a couple of cafes in Chennai that gives me good coffee, but not everywhere else. What's really happening inside? Like, do you feel that, many restaurants are opening and they are failing to see, what is it going to be?
Chennai is actually a very tough market to operate in. Let's
Okay.
be real.
Okay.
I think we have some of the most imbalanced real estate costs to labor costs to consumer bandwidth in this country, and our consumption volume isn't anywhere near other metro
Cities.
cities in the
Okay.
country. I don't know which coffee justifies a 400 rupee price point yet, but I mean, I don't think I'm not sure if we charge those prices in any of our restaurants or cafes, but it is expensive to operate.
Yes.
I mean, and there is no two ways about it, and all of it. And look, even these guys that charge 400 rupees a cup of coffee, I'm not sure how profitable they are, right? I mean, they are.
Right.
I mean, it is a struggling environment, and people are opening restaurants. I mean, rather, there's availability before the market's really caught up to it, and which I guess is the chicken and egg story. At some point, the market will catch up, and you'll have to be willing to sustain that, right?
Correct.
And the people who are playing the long game definitely have a win in their favor as long as the product is
Good, yeah.
is good.
Of course, yeah.
When I say product, it's just not the product that you're drinking, but the whole restaurant as a
Yeah,
product, right? I
yeah.
mean, if the experience, the service, the
Of course,
food
the
itself
whole thing, yeah.
is good, then you're fine. To be blunt, I think there's lack of creativity in this space. I think Chennai apes a little too much and live too quickly. If you see one restaurant or one bar doing well, every other bar or restaurant or cafe looks exactly like the
same.
previous one, right?
Right.
Even right down to the menu mix is almost the same. I think when you do that, then you've lost your competitive edge. You've lost a reason for somebody to come to you. Look, if you're taking a formula, let's say there's a cafe that you like going to, but it's not available close to where you live, and you're putting up a place like that in a market that's underserved, it's a completely different conversation. But trying to be in a really competitive market and then trying to do one more cafe that's got pretty much the same offering as the next one just because you have different interiors, that novelty is going to run out very quick.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem. So people are trying to create or invent superficial differentiators, and that's, I think, also what's causing a lot of this heartburn for consumers at this
Right.
point. People are able to see through it, right? I mean, they're a lot more well-traveled now. People are very aware. I mean, even if you don't travel, you have enough content that
media
you're consuming,
exposure. Yeah, of course, yeah.
that gives you an idea of what is being served and at what price points.
Correct.
And are we justifying that? That's the question. Like, and I'll tell you very honestly, Chennai has probably some of the least organized retail supply for any metro. Like, if you have to start a restaurant today, you have to be inventive or creative about the kind of spaces that are available. Go to Bangalore, Hyderabad, whatever, there's enough retail real estate available for you to pick and choose from.
Right.
There are retail corridors that work.
Right.
I mean, we don't have the luxury of other cities when it comes to picking and choosing real estate, which also means that you're paying the same price per square foot as a Bangalore or Hyderabad. I mean, in some cases, almost the same prices you're paying in Delhi.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah.
When you're paying those prices, you would have to assume that there's those many people walking in through those doors, and that's not the case either. So how do you make it viable?
Right.
You have to adjust for pricing, right? And the whatever the 30 or 40 people that are walking into your restaurant regularly are okay with paying those prices. That's what keeps some of these things sustainable.
How does the pricing usually work? Like, who decides the pricing?
I mean, the business technically should decide the pricing because nobody understands your costs better than you.
Right.
And you price certain things a certain way, then consumers end up uh, figuring out if that particular place works for them based on that pricing or not. And that's
Okay.
as simple as that.
Okay.
You can't expect to get champagne for beer money, right?
Of
That's
course.
not so. But then that's who you're targeting. If you want to sell champagne to a champagne consumer, then you know your pricing.
Correct.
So that's pretty much what decides pricing, I guess.
Okay, so you you oversee a bunch of restaurants, right? So it depends who exactly decides, is there like a person?
Me.
Okay, so you decide the pricing.
So
Okay, okay.
I decide the pricing because I have probably the most amount of knowledge in my team about that business.
Got it. Okay.
And I'm also drawing now from historic data. I'm drawing from now, thankfully, having done this for almost 20 years, there is some level of knowledge saying which markets can absorb what price points.
Correct.
Which is why a lot of our restaurants are concentrated in two markets, Alvarpet and Nungamaka.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
And that also gives us an understanding of what is available in these markets and what pricing strategy works, who's my core audience, what can I get away with, what is a non-negotiable. See, if I'm charging 500 rupees for a plate of pasta, it's just not for the pasta, right? People understand what they're paying for. They're paying for the service, they're paying for the ambience, they're paying for the product mix, they're paying for the diligence that goes into sourcing the right ingredients. We would rather not sell something than put a substandard ingredient in that plate.
Right.
And so those are what people are paying for, right?
Okay.
And so if you obviously follow all of those things, then pricing is fairly straightforward.
Okay, okay. How do menu designing work?
It's a tricky question.
Because you just mentioned, right? A lot of restaurants are again going with the same menus. You can spot, you go to 5, 6 bars, let's say. The finger food is pretty much the same everywhere.
I think the
So-
trend was pretty much set by Radio Room at that point.
That's also there. But how does it work? How does the menu designing? Is there a person who does it, who go to different restaurants, sets a menu?
So I do all of the menu engineering work at all of our restaurants.
So you do it.
So this is pretty much my core.
Okay, can you run us through the whole process of menu? Because I'm very interested in.
So
how
I
do
think
you-
it largely starts by getting a clear understanding of the concept. By understanding the concept, I mean by the narrative that you're going to portray to the consumer. You need to be very, very clear.
Let's take an example and probably let's say
Let's say ETC, right?
Okay, yeah.
ETC is a good example
Yeah.
where we're saying we're a handmade pasta restaurant.
Right.
We're not an Italian restaurant.
Okay.
Because the expectation is that people, if you say Italian restaurant, people are expecting pizza, people are expecting other things which we don't offer there. We don't have the luxurious space to do it.
Right.
So, and also we didn't have the budget to put, a proper pizza oven and run a full pasta program there. So we chose our battle, right? We said we will try and give Chennai one of the best pasta experiences according to us.
Okay.
Whether it is or not is secondary, but this was the
No, I love ETC.
the
I have to say.
thank you. So this is the concept that we led with, right?
Okay.
We knew what the parameters were. We knew the kind of mix that needed to go in. We have to obviously, in India, you have to account for a bunch of things, especially in a low consumption market like Chennai. You have to take into account saying, in your category, you have to be able to cater for different dietary requirements, different menu preferences, right? You have vegetarians. You have vegetarians that don't eat egg. You have vegetarians that don't eat egg or mushroom. You have vegetarians that don't eat soy.
Yes.
You have to make sure that when you create a vegetarian menu mix, you're catering for all of this.
Okay.
And then you have non-vegetarians who eat only chicken.
Chicken, correct, yeah.
And you can't have one chicken dish on that menu,
Correct.
right? So you'll have to have at least 2 or 3 variations of it. Then if you're doing other meats, what part of your audience are you alienating by, say, doing a beef or a pork on that menu?
Correct.
And you have to be prepared for that, right? And you have to be prepared to own that also. Say, okay, look, I'm going to give you an authentic experience, then it's impossible to avoid certain ingredients. So you calibrate your menu for that. and then you prepare a menu mix based on saying you need X number of seafood dishes, X number of meat dishes, X number of chicken dishes, X number of veggie dishes, X number of egg-free veg dishes.
Right.
And that gives you a basic menu mix. And a lot of this obviously comes from experience now.
Okay,
Right?
of course.
Then you start doing your trials.
Right.
So I write my menu way before we even, put a pan on the stove.
Okay, okay.
And in my head, I have to conceptualize every dish. And there's no dish that is there just as a placeholder. If it's
Okay.
not delicious, it doesn't have a place on the menu.
Okay, okay.
That is, again, a non-negotiable.
Right.
And then you're also now trying to figure out what size of portions can you do such that it becomes tenable in the long run. It's
Right.
not a one-hit wonder.
Right, right.
It might be delicious,
Yeah.
but if it's going to cost you 3,000 rupees every time you come in, you're not going to come there for apart from special occasions.
Correct.
So which also means that I have to then figure out the kind of ingredient that will be able to get me closest to my ideal dish within that price point.
Right.
So obviously deliciousness is the most important thing, followed by value for money. This is something that we look for,
Okay.
but eventually what prioritizes itself in this whole menu engineering thing for us is crave-worthiness, right? How much will you crave a certain dish?
Okay, okay.
Because if you're able to create a dish that people will crave,
Right.
then value for money becomes a really large,
Yeah.
subjective part of this thing.
Correct, yes.
Because you're willing to pay anything if you're going to crave it.
Very, very true. Yes, yes.
So it gives you that level of, flexibility to create products.
Right, right.
So when you talk about menu engineering, the lever about food being delicious is secondary than more than what you crave it. Like, for example, there are people who crave McDonald's burgers. Whether it's delicious or not is secondary.
It's a crave, yeah, correct, yeah.
And that's pretty much what you lead with. At
Okay.
least that's what I lead with.
Okay, okay. Oh, wow, interesting. Like the third point is actually so true. Like, you have these random cravings and suddenly you will know in the restaurant la irundhu idu saapidnom அப்படின்ட்டு. But one thing that I keep craving from ETC is the fruit miso.
Fruity miso.
It's so good. Like, in the middle of the night, I feel like having that. But unfortunately, you guys don't deliver.
We don't deliver.
So, like, we had to literally drive, go there, get out of ETC, and we were eating. I love the fruit miso. It's just
In
too
fact,
good.
a lot of our restaurants now we don't deliver.
Okay.
All of our new restaurants we don't do delivery.
Okay.
We hardly do delivery. But,
Why though?
well, I've been a vocal advocate of the build restaurants for what they're worth
Okay.
kind of thing, because the whole delivery ecosystem is actually a race to the bottom. I mean, it's okay to be relevant and be present for some of the brands which need it.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's just the cost structures just don't make any sense. It's okay to get incremental revenue, but as a profitability, in a profitability aspect of it, there is little to no money in the delivery business.
Okay,
So,
okay.
which is why we don't operate any cloud kitchens or whatever. We never have
Okay.
for this reason.
That's interesting. Okay.
Now, coming back to the fruity miso, that made its way onto the menu primarily as a dietary requirement.
Okay.
It's the only egg-free, gluten-free thing on our menu.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when somebody comes and says, I want to eat dessert, but I can't eat gluten,
Right.
and I don't eat eggs,
Of course, yeah.
what do you have on your menu? So that's how
Fruit miso.
Fruity miso came onto the
lovely.
menu.
I love that dessert, and I am a fruit-based dessert person, and
nice.
that's just works perfectly for me. It's just too good. Let's talk about marketing, right? Like social media has become such a huge like it's become so important in marketing restaurants now. Like, there's influencer marketing, like, people are going to cafes, doing videos, putting it out. Can you tell us, like, have you done it first, and does it really work?
Now it's become as ubiquitous as trying to figure out what kind of cutlery you're going to be using in your restaurant, right? You have to figure out your marketing strategy up front, right?
Yeah.
And social media marketing is right now probably the most cost-effective marketing strategy that you can use.
Correct.
Am I good at it? No. Do I understand it well enough? Definitely no. Which is why we hire professional, agencies to help us navigate this. In today's day and age with such short attention spans, there is nothing better than social media to get, bums on seats, right? I mean, I think it's the one way to communicate clearly what you are and how you can get there. Are there alternate ways to do it? Sure. I think you have to just be creative about it and find out what your market is, who your audience is, and then try and find a strategy that'll give you the same outcome.
Right.
But yeah, social media is undoubtedly one of the most cost-effective ways of getting people in through your doors.
Okay. Okay. There's a lot of trends on social media, right? Like there's a surge of Korean restaurants that's happening. There's boba tea drinking. There's matcha drinking. So when you see these trends on social media, how do you kind of decide? Okay, you know what? This trend is going to work in Chennai. You know, this is going to work in Chennai, and I have to start this in Chennai. How do you decide on
I
that?
don't.
You don't.
I mean, you'd never follow a trend.
Okay.
This trend is extremely short-lived.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
So when even now we build for the market, we build for the location, we
Okay.
build for our strengths.
Okay, but let's say you want to bring something new to Chennai, right? Like I was saying, Korean restaurant and all of these. How do you decide on this is something that we're going to bring in new to Chennai?
I have to play to my strengths. I don't know anything about Korean food.
Okay.
Like maybe know 3 dishes, right? I'll never start a Korean restaurant.
Okay.
It's taken me years of understanding or getting better at Japanese food to start opening Japanese restaurants.
Okay.
Italian, I've probably been the most comfortable cooking for many, many years. So that is something that comes naturally to me. So it's very easy for me to open in that category.
Right.
But essentially, most people that are following a trend may not have the entire knowledge on how to build that product, which is why you see a lot of failures also.
Right.
And any restaurant that is trending, you'll have to figure out what the life cycle of that restaurant is.
True.
Unless and until you're constantly innovating and creating new products in that mix, it's very tough to sustain that trend. I'll give you a classic example. Even in our portfolio, Maison Indulgence was one of them, right?
Right.
I mean, this was the first restaurant to start this whole chocolate pour
Yes.
thing in Chennai or whatever. I don't know if it was the first or one of the first, whatever, right? Then you see every street corner has somebody doing this chocolate pour thing, and now it's become fairly common. A lot of them are obviously also struggling now. With Maison, they've moved past that chocolate pour thing.
Right.
It's now not even like a 15 or 20% of our overall revenue comes from that particular dessert.
Right.
80% comes from somewhere else on that menu.
Okay.
You may use the trend to kind of drive footfalls,
Right.
but you need to figure out what are the other parts of your menu that are going to keep this business afloat. And being cognizant of that is very important.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll get stuck in a loop.
So I have a personal question, right? Like my husband and I, we have thought about starting an idli kada at some point in life, okay? But when we also think about it and we also talk about it, being in Chennai and starting an idli kada, and when we have restaurants like Sangeeta and like, you know, all these like really good restaurants where we already get good idlis and dosas, is it a wise idea to start it?
Well, it's a need-based product, but it's also a commodity. I find, some of my recent learnings of trying to get into the same space has been, I'm not cut out to do commodity businesses.
Okay.
I believe that the city doesn't necessarily pay premiums for marginally better products. Unless they're exponentially better, you're not going to get the kind of
Got
premiums that it needs. So it obviously has to be a high volume, high footfall game.
Right.
Definitely don't do this as a delivery business because already the margins are wafer thin. So sure, I mean, if you have a great idli product that you can think of that you and the formula is bang on, do it.
Okay.
But do it as a place where you're physically interacting with your end customer.
Like you have to be present.
You have to
there,
be
yeah.
present. You
Yes.
can't do a cloud kitchen. If you're going to commit to it, commit to it. But again, if you're going to start an idli restaurant, don't start it in Chennai, where there's already an
Exactly.
oversupply,
That's exactly
right?
what I want to do.
I mean, I wouldn't, right?
Right.
Do it in Indore or even Bombay for that matter, right? Where there's enough opportunity and consumption is fantastic, and the market offering right now is substandard.
Right. Right.
And that is the opportunity.
Right.
But sure, you're in Chennai and you have to do it, then you have to find the best market that will be willing to absorb it at a price that makes it feasible for you to sell.
Okay. Got it. This is what I was talking about.
When we retire, move.
Move. Yeah. Leave Chennai. What's your go-to comfort food after a long day?
Curd rice.
Curd rice, huh? What do you like to cook for yourself?
What do I like to cook? Eggs.
Eggs.
It's the one thing that I absolutely love.
And what's the one dish you absolutely refuse to cook?
I absolutely hate making masala macaroni, but Mansi loves it, so I don't have a choice. I think it's the most vile thing on the planet.
Okay. Your top 3 restaurants in Chennai.
I can't plug in my own. So let's see.
So say something else then. If you have to go and have food.
If you look at my order history or my recent eaten things, it'll probably be McDonald's, KFC, and Domino's. But sometimes I just crave for no-brain food, right? You just eat things for the sake of eating it. I love sticks at
Okay.
Hyatt Regency. Off late, I've been enjoying the brunches at Flying Elephant.
Okay, actually I've never been there. Was it really good?
It's gotten really, really good.
Okay.
Pumpkin Tales is another restaurant that I
Oh
go to
yes,
often.
I love pumpkin tails. Yeah.
So, the restaurants that are not mine that I go to often are definitely these three.
Okay. Favorite 3 coffee places in Chennai?
I have this bias. I end up drinking coffee only in my places.
Beachville.
Between Beachville, Delfina.
I like Beachville. I have not been to Delfina yet.
So, Delfina does a very different coffee than.
Like, is it good for black coffee or
It's
like?
actually it's really good for milk-based drinks, but it's
okay.
it's also good for black coffee. It's they do a very traditional Italian roast, so it's dark roasted coffee done a certain way. So it's a very different profile of coffee than you get anywhere else in Chennai.
Okay.
Honestly, my best cup of coffee is usually at home.
Okay.
If I'm drinking coffee outside, it's because it's a necessity, not necessarily because I enjoy it. But coffee places that I default to if I'm not drinking at Beachville or Delfina or one of my places at Maison or wherever, right? Sandy's or French Rose, whatever. If I'm not drinking coffee at any of my places, then the coffee that I'm drinking is usually at Coffee Trotter. I do
Yeah,
their
coffee trotters are
I
good.
do
Yeah.
I do their drip coffee usually.
Okay.
I'm very picky about my espressos. So if I'm outside, I'd rather do either a long black or a drip coffee.
Okay.
Wow, this is so tough.
Wow, I
think
didn't think it would be this tough. இதுதான் வந்து ஃபாஸ்டா வரும்னு நினைச்சேன் இதுதான் வந்து அப்படியே
I mean, I'm also such a homing pigeon. I don't really venture out and explore too much. So,
My god, you sound so much like Niket.
why? When you're going to go out, I love predictability, right? When I'm going to go out, I want to eat at the same places. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the recommendations I gave you when you went to Paris.
Yeah.
If I go to Paris 20 times, 18 times I have to eat in at the same place that I told you to go and eat. If I'm there for 5 days, 4 days would be just about going back to my usual haunts. And then
Okay.
one day will be like exploring someplace new.
This is the same discussion Niket and I keep having because I'm someone who wants to try something new and he's someone who wants to go to this thing. Every Sunday he wants to go to Pumpkin Tales only.
Yeah,
and
but
I'm
what's
like,
wrong with that?
I want to go to another breakfast place. I want to try another breakfast. He's like, why do you want to experiment?
If pancakes good at a place or eggs are perfect at one place, why would you bother shifting? I mean, this is Mansi and me, right? I don't like going to a place and getting disappointed. When I know you get,
Oh, yeah.
when you know
Again.
that something is good, why
No, but like
fix
it's
it?
nice to try something new. Even the way I look at things is like, even if I'm going to get disappointed, it's okay. At the end of the day, I feel like I tried something new. He says the same thing. Like, I don't want to get disappointed.
So my problem is not about getting disappointed. It's about we don't go out as much, right? I mean, if I'm not eating at one of my restaurants or we're not doing trials, I'm cooking at home.
Okay.
Right? It's very, very simple. And even the other day, some friends were talking about going out to eat, and I said, look, I know exactly what I want to eat. I'm going to eat it at home. So you guys are welcome to stay back and eat what I'm eating.
They eat it at home.
So you guys can stay back and eat it, and it was the most rewarding meal, right? I mean,
Okay.
they absolutely loved it.
Okay.
For me, if I'm going to go out and taking the effort to go out to eat a meal, the last thing I want to do is nitpick and saying the service being bad, the meal being so mediocre. And I'm like, why would I pay for this?
I get it.
Right? So, which is why I resort to the same 10 restaurants that I've been going to.
Okay.
Like, for example, if I want Punjabi food, I land up at either Broken Bridge Cafe or Punjabi, what is that?
Bubble da Punjabi. Yes. Yeah.
Or one of those places,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
That's it. I'm like, why experiment? You get perfection in these two places and I'm done, right?
Right.
I don't even bother going to a Peshawari or whatever. Right? Where's the patience to dress up and go and sit in a restaurant to eat rotis and butter chicken?
Yeah.
Again, if I want to eat Chinese food, just land up at sticks. Don't get disappointed, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Got it. Okay. Fine. So those are the coffee spots you mentioned.
I barely mentioned them, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, you said Delfina. That's
I mean,
something
that's
that I
again,
haven't
Delfina.
tried.
Again,
That's
if it's
yours
my own
again.
my own
Yeah.
places, then Sandy's obviously the coffee is exactly what I want it to be.
Yes, yes.
Beachville, Delfina, Sandy's, Maison,
I've never had coffee in Maison as well.
So
Maybe
I
you
mean, they're
should try
all
it.
dialed differently for different
Of
purposes, but
course,
they're
of
done
course.
well.
Okay, cool. So if you had to run a pop-up restaurant in another country, where would it be and what cuisine would you serve?
So interestingly, I'm doing something in the Highlands in Scotland.
Oh, you
Yeah,
are?
I'm doing a pop-up
Oh,
in
lovely.
April,
Okay.
and it is my
I might
interpretation.
actually be there in April.
Oh wow, okay. I'll tell you where it is.
Okay.
All will be revealed soon.
Okay, cool.
It's in a beautiful space, 2 hours
Okay.
north of Glasgow in the Highlands,
Uh-huh.
in overlooking Loch Awe. It's on the banks of Loch Awe. So I'm doing my interpretation of Scottish food, but with
Okay.
using ingredients from in and around Loch Awe.
Okay. So that's like I just asked like a random question, but you're actually doing it, so that's
So yeah,
nice.
I'm
Cool.
looking forward to that.
Nice. What's the most ridiculous customer request you've ever received?
Wow, this is a laundry list of things that I have to look through every day.
It's something that you can think of on top of your mind.
If it's a full restaurant, they'll be like, "Can you give me a table?" I mean, like, if the restaurant's full, I can't serve you on my back, right? I mean, but and people walk in. Can you
Right.
squeeze me in? I'm like, where?
Yeah.
There's only those many seats, those many tables.
Right.
It's just sometimes just people's expectations are just ridiculous. I mean, the most common thing is if people will come and make the most bizarre assumptions about what a restaurant is actually possible of doing.
Right.
I'm going to be there in 15 minutes and I want to be out in 5.
What does that even
You
mean?
like a glass of water? Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but this whole can you make space for us in a busy restaurant
Yeah.
is something that I constantly deal with. And I'm not even sure how to answer it anymore. So I just give up and say sorry. I'm like, can't.
Cool. So I was watching this video of yours and you were talking about your retirement plan about the Hunger Project. Is it still intact?
I guess having twins unexpectedly put a tailspin on timelines.
Okay.
So we were just blessed with twins 2 months ago, as you know.
Yes.
So
Congratulations on
thank you.
that.
So that kind of put a tailspin on my timelines. I was supposed to retire next year and to start focusing on hunger.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, it definitely started work already. In fact, we're starting to do work. Significant amounts of work are
Can
already
you
underway.
tell us a bit about it? What is it exactly?
So I think the focus is, while it's still hunger, has kind of shifted to being an overarching thing, to being a very specific area of focus at this point, which is I'm trying to find solutions to feed people that have been displaced due to either man-made events or calamities or circumstances, right? So how do we get people that have been displaced, get food to them that they can relate to quickly in a situation of crisis?
Right.
So that is something that I wanted to, that
Okay.
I've been working on of late, and that's what we've shifted to. Not saying we obviously need to pick these battles.
Got it, yeah.
And right now, I know that that is a situation that needs desperate attention.
Right.
Because when we started researching this 5 years ago, a mass scale calamity where or 10,000 people or more are displaced was 1 in 6 weeks in India.
Oh, okay.
In 5 years, can you take a guess as to where that number is today?
Crazy.
I
Yeah.
ask this question quite often, but people don't realize that that event is now once in 3 weeks.
Oh my God. Okay.
So this is something that we are staring down the barrel of these things happening more and more often.
Right.
So this is something that I want to solve for. This
Right.
is something that I believe India needs. It's not just a backyard problem anymore, right? It's a national level issue that I believe needs creative solutions. So this is something that I want to that I'm going to be focusing on
Okay.
quite significantly from next year, though.
Okay, lovely. I'm glad it's still intact, you know.
Yeah,
So
of
because
course.
that video that I watched, I think it's very old. So I thought maybe things would have changed.
I
Cool,
told
you're gonna
Mansi, that when we met, when she was 19, I was 21, and I was like, look, it's when I'm 40, you'll have to figure out how to keep things afloat, because I'm going to move full time into running a non-profit that'll try and solve for
Right.
hunger at scale.
Right.
And she's like, "Okay, are you out of your mind? How will you know what you're going to do 20 years from now?" And I think it's just, as I'm getting older, it's just getting clearer and clearer, and that vision for that.
That's
and
lovely that you
so-
had this clarity at what, like 20? It's crazy.
21, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Nice.
Anyways.
Awesome. So we're going to move to the game section. It's called Love or Hate.
Okay.
I'm going to give you some statements and you have to say if you love it or hate it.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So you just have
So
to.
I'm usually the cynic, so it's probably going to be more hate than love.
Customers asking for the recipe of your signature dish. Oh, you love it?
Yeah, what's wrong?
Okay,
It's
and
what
do
it's
you
meant to
share it?
I share it all the time.
Oh, lovely. That's new. Nice. Okay. Special requests like no onion, no garlic, but make it spicy. What? You said you're going to say hate for everything and
Yeah, but
you're like loving it.
Look, it's the same thing, right? I mean, if it's the same reason why I go to a restaurant where they know me, and I go there often, is because you want to feel comfortable. That's the reason we're going out. You're going out to eat what you want to eat. If it's a dish that's not meant to be spicy, or if it's not meant to be, sure, I'll make it, but I'll give you a fair heads up that it's not going to be anything like what it's supposed to.
Right.
But end of the day, you decide how good or bad you want your meal to be.
Right.
I'm sure I'm okay with customization. I'm okay with pink sauce pasta. I don't
Okay.
hate it. I mean, I know I won't order it for myself, but if somebody else wants to eat it, it's fine.
Got it. Trend of plant-based or vegan menus.
I'm a changed man. I
Wow.
used to hate doing anything vegetarian on these things, but of late I've been eating and experimenting a lot with veg food. And in fact, even in meeting room, we have in fact, I'm very proud of the vegetarian offerings that we have at meeting room. It's probably some of the best
Oh, I didn't know
veg
meeting
food
room
that we
had
have.
veg food.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
probably some of the best veg food we have
Okay.
in any of our restaurants.
Okay, lovely. I'm going to try
Wow,
that.
I think I've got these mixed up at this point.
Farm to table dining trends.
Gee, where do you think any of these ingredients originate from? I'm like, yeah, obviously, duh, everything originates from a farm, right? And ends up at a table somewhere. Sure, if you want to charge more and just say farm to table, go ahead. But I think it's a bit ridiculous.
Okay, QR code menus instead of physical ones. Mixed.
I love some of it. I hate most of it.
Okay.
And the reason I like it is the convenience of it, but it just makes it so impersonal.
True. Yes.
And also, you can't really understand customer expectations, dynamics, and that is something that
Okay.
you kind of lose out on.
Got it. Cool. So I think we've almost come to an end. And before I leave, I always leave with a word. I have a feeling you know this word, but let's see. Do you know what acidulation is?
No, my English is terrible.
You don't know acidulation?
No.
Yes. Okay, so acidulation means making something sour, usually with lemon juice.
So it sounds exactly. I mean, it means exactly like it sounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So that is acidulation for you. Cool. Thank you so much, Sandy,
It was
for
fun.
doing this with me. And I had a great time talking
Thank
to
you
you.
so much. It was good fun being here.
Thank you. Cool. With that, it's time for us to leave. And like I always say, be good and do good.